So the Samsung Galaxy S20 was one of those phones that Samsung released in 2020, and I personally like this phone. I still remember buying this phone. I had to go to FedEx to go pick it up, and I still have a lot of feelings about this device. And although it wouldn't be the first phone I would recommend from Samsung to buy anymore, I still think it has some value, and I still think it's probably worth buying for some people out there. Now, within this year so far, not a crazy amount of things have changed from my early 2020 review or 2023 review of this thing, but regardless, it's still worth mentioning that this phone is still a very, very good phone in many different ways. On the body, 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED display on the front of this thing, and this display on the S20 still looks beautiful. It is by far still one of my most favorite things going on with this type of device, and that's just always been something that I preferred. Samsung made really good panels, and this was actually the last 1440p panel that Samsung put on their smaller S lineup. So of course with the S23 Ultras, those always have 1440p displays, but since the S20, the base models, the cheaper ones, never really had 1440p displays. So it's kind of interesting they've done that. So this one was the last one in that sense. It was a 120Hz panel as well and looks very good. USB Type-C port on the bottom with a microSD card slot. That is something we don't see on an everyday basis, and that is something that we were getting on this type of device, which again is an awesome thing. So when you were getting something like the Galaxy S20, you were actually getting a phone that had basically a microSD card slot and a USB-C port in 2020. That was actually a really big deal, and a lot of phone manufacturers since then have pretty much removed microSD card slots, including Samsung, but it's super cool that they had that type of capability back then. We had standard glass on the back, triple camera setup, wireless and reverse wireless charging, and overall you were getting a really good phone. I like this phone a lot, and even now when I look at something like the Galaxy S20, I still think this phone sits at a really good spot of being a very good quality phone and being a very cheap phone that you can buy fairly easily as well. So personally for me, this phone gets a massive thumbs up from that perspective alone. Now you were also getting that camera, which I think was pretty good at the time. It was a triple camera setup and wide ultra-wide telephoto lenses. I think this phone in that perspective was super solid, and that was another good thing going on for this device as well. If you were wanting to go ahead and buy a phone that basically had, a good camera, this thing had one of the best cameras at the time, and it was an 8K camera as well. So this is just a crazy thing. You really don't need to use the 8K at all anymore, but it's still a super cool thing that we had that type of capability on this type of device at that time. Now on top of that, we were also getting basically, software support for quite a bit of time. This was, it did get Android 13, so One UI 5, but the thing you're going to have to remember here is that with this type of device, it's probably on its last version of software. So that's just kind of how these things go. As of right now, I don't know how much longer this phone is going to last. I could probably estimate, if I'm being honest, this phone is probably ending off fairly soon. Probably it's ending off, as soon as this year. But it's still, I would say with some Samsung phones, you can buy them even after. If you want to buy this phone now, okay, but just know it's not going to be getting any more software support. And that can probably throw off a lot of people, just that in and of itself. So that kind of covers it up there. Performance-wise, you're still getting that Snapdragon 865 chipset inside with 8GB of RAM. Still a fairly good amount of performance inside of that chipset, which is always very good. And I think that, again, is another really cool thing going on for this type of device, that you're actually able to go ahead and have a fairly solid performing phone, and it's not super expensive in that area either, but it's not the best performing phone, and it's like a very average one when it comes down to it. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. And to be honest, I definitely do think the Galaxy S20 was definitely a good phone when it first came out, but I just don't think it's necessarily worth buying. I don't know if this would be the first phone I'd recommend people to buy, mostly because of the software support aspect. You're much better off buying something I think that's still kind of supported, like a Galaxy S21, Galaxy S22. The S20 I think is in a little bit of a limbo phase where it's not really not worth it, but it's not really worth it as much as maybe an S21 is. So keep that in mind, and that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.